From the WatchBox Studios, this is On Point on WatchBox with Cynthia Arnie.
Good morning and welcome to On Point on WatchBox. It again is a pleasure to bring you the show as we do each and every week, and we continue to invite you to tune into the radio show On Point with Cynthia Arnie, heard every Sunday evening, 6 p.m. on 101.3 The Big DM. Today we're talking about proposed cuts in education spending in South Carolina. Governor Nikki Haley says a proposed budget for the next fiscal year increases money for public schools, but a closer look shows her recommendations would actually decrease state funding by nearly $80 million. It turns out the governor is correct only by disregarding some pots of money. Her proposal represents an increase in reoccurring money for K-12 schools when factoring in all state revenue sources, chiefly the penny of the state sales tax that goes directly to education programs. However, Haley's proposal eliminates anything funded this school year with one-time money. Now that includes $56 million that legislators added to the budget to boost a key funding source that pays primarily for teachers' salaries, money they added over her veto. And this week on Point, Brian, we're going to be talking about education spending and how that will impact students and teachers all over. Well, it's always a delight to sit here with you and to share the couch with you. And you guys have been covering this issue in the newsroom as well.
Of course, each and every year, this is one of the hottest button issues that ever comes out of the State House. There's a lot of debate that goes into it. And the budget writing process just beginning this past week. So we know that this is going to be on the front burner for quite some time. And a lot of voices are going to want to be heard in this. And we want to present some of those voices today.
We do. And we thought it was important to present voices on each side of the issue. We have Neil Melon here in the first segment with South Carolinians for Responsible Government. And then we'll have Jackie Hicks from the South Carolina Education Association later in the show. Mr. Melon, welcome to On Point on WatchBox. You've been here with us before.
Thanks so much for having me. I think it's always a win when we talk about what's best for kids and what's best for students and teachers. It's wonderful that we're giving this issue some attention.
Now, you're a former educator yourself, but you are a proponent of the choice issue, the fact that well, I guess what I'm trying to say is you support families having the opportunity to choose where their children go to school as opposed to being sent to a particular public school, the way our system currently works.
That's right. We think that parents have the most information and the best motivation to make decisions about their own kids. And that's not to say that teachers don't care for and love and work to help students. It's just a fact of nature that an engaged parent fundamentally has a stronger motivation and a greater level of understanding for what's best for that child. And so for most students, their local public school, traditional public school, that's probably the best option. But we think that anytime we're talking about education budgets, we need to talk about, number one, getting kids in the classroom that's really best for them. And then two, I think we need to be really frank about what it means when we talk about spending more tax money on public schools or investing more in students and teachers. And those are two really different things.
But you do understand, I'm going to pitch it to Brian in a minute, but you do understand that proponents of public education see this basically as a blatant attack on sincere efforts of thousands of teachers out there and millions of students who are in these public schools and look to these schools to prepare them for the future.
Well, I'll tell you what, the reality is that, and we saw it this week in the House, the governor writes a budget, and that's an exercise in political demonstration, and then it's put to the side, and the House staffers, as they did this week, begin to write the budget from scratch. And every single year, the amount of money that we spend on K-12 education, whether in total or per student, goes up. In 2008, it was about $8 billion. 2009, it was about $8.3 billion. In 2010, it got up to 8.6. Now we're talking about $9 billion.
Well, cost of living is going up too, Neil.
That's right. And so when we talk about, is it going to go up? Yes. It will go up. It will go up this year. It will go up next year. It will go up forever. But what has happened in the same period, the percentage of that budget that goes into the classroom has dropped every single year. And now it's less than half the money. And so if we want to find awesome teachers who are equipped to give the best possible instruction, we need to have our resources focused on the teachers in the classroom rather than siphoning it away on the administration and political activity and all kinds of other things that schools are doing that are not about the basics of instructing students.
Speaking of politics, I'm sure you recognize, and last week, a couple of weeks ago, we had Representative Mia Butler-Garrick, and she mentioned that the governor didn't talk about education in her State of the State
no,
address.
No, there wasn't one word uttered about it. It was something that caught a lot of people's attention.
Sure.
I know, but it's going to be something that gets plenty of attention in the weeks and months to come. And he just mentioned that the issue that he sees is, you don't think that schools are getting the most bang for their buck, so to speak, because it's not going to all the right places. But when we talk about school choice, it's an issue we've heard for a decade almost in this state, and it never has gotten to the point where we get it past, you know, the chamber of the House, the Senate, what have you, where it becomes policy. Are we going to get to a point where it ever gets past there, or are your supporters fighting a losing battle in that?
Oh, I don't think so. There's over 23 states now that have some program that help middle and low income families who want to send their child to the school of their choice, make that a reality. Each one of those programs is a little bit different in the way that every state has the ability to approach an issue slightly differently. And I think what's happened increasingly, and the report that just came out from the Education Oversight Committee here in South Carolina saying our long-term gaps between black and white, between rich and poor, are worsening. We're spending more money every year. We already spend much more than Georgia, much more than North Carolina, and it's getting worse and the gaps are getting bigger. And so the question is, there are some families who can opt out. There are some families, 15,000 very low income families who already struggle to send their kids to a different school. What if we could support those? And that's not at the cost of public education, just as we're not talking about, you know, tightening down on teacher salaries. Our group actually came out with a proposal that the Education Association is against to give every teacher a $200 tax credit, so when they're forced to buy school supplies out of their pocket, they could get the money back.
But Janelle, you said won't put a death knell in public education, but when you're siphoning money off of the top of public education budgets, how can it not hurt?
So the school choice proposals are not vouchers. They're not siphoning money from one pot to another. They're tax credit programs, which allows people to redirect a portion of their liability. The great thing is the amount of money that they're redirecting is so much less than what it costs to educate a student in the public system. This year, $11,700 is what each child in the public school system is funded at. That means because the school choice mechanism is so much more modest that it's a savings. So you have more money per student. And when I talk about priorities, you know, this morning I went on the Richland 2 School District's website because I was just curious, because I know that parents in Richland 2 wanted their teachers who are doing really well to get paid well, maybe get performance bonuses, whatever it takes.
Sure, and
right?
what did you find?
Well, what we found that just this last month, there were $12,600 in reimbursements for cell phones for non-teaching administrators. There was $20,500 in travel for school board and school administrators.
And so what you're basically saying is those are non-essential expenditures in the public school system that don't go directly to kids.
If you can tell me what a $8,900 bill at the New York Hilton Hotel has to do with eliminating the student achievement gap between blacks and whites in Richland 2 district, I would love to know.
I think he's got us there. We're going to go to break. We're going to keep you here with us. When we come back, I do want to talk about that circuit of private schools in South Carolina. You know where they are, Neil. They are these schools that were set up as a knee-jerk reaction to integration as a means of resisting the mandated integration, federally enforced integration in the 1960s. And I want to find out what role they play in the choice debate. Good?
Great.
All right, you guys stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're watching On Point on WatchBox with Cynthia Arnie on Columbia's own WatchBox.
Welcome back to OnPoint on WatchBox. Today we're talking about proposed budget cuts and educational spending in South Carolina. And Brian, as you know, Governor Nikki Haley has a proposed budget out there for next fiscal year, and it includes some decreases for public education.
It does, and we made the point in the first segment that there weren't any mentions of public education during her State of the State address. So,
right.
But obviously you're not going to ignore that in the budget you lay out. It's worth noting too that this budget isn't what becomes law. This is just kind of a blueprint that may or may not get followed, because
Absolutely.
the lawmakers are in that process now, just starting it this last week. So there's going to be a heck of a battle on their hands.
Absolutely. We've got Neil Melon here with us with South Carolinians for Responsible Government. And Neil, and we're talking about the education issue. Is it fair to say that you are not a proponent of public education?
Oh, not at all. Public education is essential. I don't think that we can use the term public education and only mean more money for government-owned schools. Public education means an educated public. The fact that all of us rely on an economy, a political system, a civic life in which people have a level of education. We rely on that. We need people, obviously there's an important value in itself of a student realizing their potential and becoming a human being in the fullest sense, but we all depend that this happens. And so we believe, our group and a lot of other organizations, is that that is such an important goal that we need to be pragmatic about how we get there. And as I mentioned last segment, we're spending $9 billion now on the public schools, and every year as that number goes up, and it will go up again this year, the amount of money that's actually going to the classroom goes down. And a lot of the folks, and some of the folks we'll hear from later today, are actually part of the problem. They're siphoning money out, either from teachers' paychecks or from contracts with the schools, and it's not going to the classroom.
Of course, those individuals that are coming up after you will take issue with that statement, so I need to say that because they will point to these expenses, and I know that some of the expenses appear extreme, Neil, but they will point to those expenses and some of the ones that you have listed there as just part of doing business. We're not sure why this person was staying at the hotel or whatever, and so it's kind of unfair to say this is an example of wasteful spending without having all of the details. Don't you agree?
Oh, we've done FOIAs on this, and I can tell you I have piles of receipts. The $8,000 bill, $9,000 bill at the Hilton Hotel in New York this month was for a lavish conference. It was called training. It didn't go to, imagine we chose the best school teacher in Richland 2 and said, we're going to give you a $9,000 bonus because you deserve it and you're making a difference in the lives of the kids. Or we'll send an administrator to a conference for a few days in New York and they'll claim a lot of per diem. Or a superintendent who makes in Richland 2 $215,000 and who gets $10,000 a year in travel costs, they'll take another, as they did last month, $5,000 in travel expenses. We could take just a tiny bit of that money and give it to the classroom teachers.
And so you use that as an example of the fact that perhaps there does need to be a different system where the tax credits can be used to follow a student to another place. And before we went to break, we teased the fact that there are a number of schools, private schools in the state of South Carolina, that are placed all over the place, and they appear to have been a knee-jerk reaction to integration. Would those schools benefit from this?
My guess is that any school that exists for those ends would not choose to participate because the accountability language in the legislation is so strict. And the fact is this, people who have money and want to send their kids to private schools already can. The program that is being considered this year, that is being considered last year, the year before, is about helping middle and low income kids and kids with special needs. By definition, the kids who have the hardest times and are now unable to exercise choice begin to have a level of equality with the families that already do. And we already know there's 15,000 low-income families who are sacrificing to send their kids to private schools across the state. And it is worth noting, most folks don't realize the absolute first integrated school in South Carolina that was integrated decades before is St. Anne's up in York County. I mean, the history of progressive educators going it alone and for social justice reasons, for every example that you rightfully point to of people doing something that maybe we don't agree with,
sure,
I'm going to show you, the school in downtown Charleston that takes girls who got pregnant and aren't really that welcome in the traditional public school system and says, we're going to find a way to make it work. Or the military school that takes the dropouts. The fact is, education is so important. We need to be a lot more pragmatic. We can't just say $9 billion, let's try to do our best. We need to reward the people who are engaged in making a difference. So that's teachers and parents.
That's the last word of this segment.
That's going to have to be the last word. Neil Melon, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so very much. When we come back, we're going to talk to Jackie Hicks and other supporters of public education who believe that what the governor is proposing is a slap in the face to the hard-working teachers and students alike in public schools. Stay tuned.
You're watching On Point on WatchBox with Cynthia Arnie on Columbia's own WatchBox.
Welcome back to On Point on WatchBox. Brian and I are talking about proposed spending cuts in education. Governor Nikki Haley has put a proposed budget out there and includes some decreases in education. Had Neil Melon on at the beginning of the show.
Yeah,
he
one side of the story.
Yep. Now we've got the other.
Yes, we do.
Jackie Hicks has been chomping at the bit over there to get in there. You ain't like none of that stuff Neil Melon was saying, did you?
Well, some of it is correct. I mean, you know, there's some things out there that the South Carolina Education Association agrees with. And when he's talking about choice, we're all for choice. We just do not want that taxpayer dollar going to for a voucher. And so, but you put choice within the public school system, we're all for it. And we're looking at a bill now that will allow students to cross over district lines. There are some districts that have better schools, say art, or that, for example.
Sure.
And you know, work all that. It's to see if we can work out those issues.
Sure.
Because lots of times we want to just throw money at things and say, oh, this is what we need to do. This is not what we need to do. Well, let's pilot program this.
I hear you.
And see exactly what's going to work.
Well, Jermaine Singletary knows what works in the classroom.
Yeah, he's right there.
You've been in there in the classroom. How's it going?
Yes, ma'am. It's you know, difficult at times. When we look at salary cuts and that type thing, it's very difficult within the class. I actually teach within a alternative setting, so I have some of the more troublesome students. Wouldn't say terrible, but troublesome in the fact that they're trying to get their lives together. And when we look at it, basically I do a lot of traveling back and forth to work. I travel 80 miles a day, 40 one way, 40 miles the other way. So when you look at salary is a very important issue. Basically, I'm taking a lot of funding out of my pockets to help within the classroom. Basically, I've decided to actually put together a nonprofit company because the kids in our school actually need a lot more funding.
Sure.
So we actually go out and I actually raise money on my own, funding on my own, to actually have programs that actually help students and parents come together. We even use basic funding out of our own pockets just to help my wife.
You like
and
that
I.
kind of innovation,
So.
don't you, Jackie?
Absolutely. And we have many teachers around this state that are doing the same thing. And it's these sound bites that we always get, that we're the problem, you know. The teachers aren't doing what they're supposed to do. They're not.
Take lavish trips.
Oh, give me a lavish trip. I don't think I've had one lately. I mean, you know, teachers aren't, we don't do this. They've taken, and even something that's very important to teachers is professional development. And even that line item has been cut tremendously from the state budget. And there are things that we need to make us better in the classroom. And Jermaine here is doing some things on his own to make more money to help his students, for him to, and them to be more successful in the classroom. And so that's all we're asking for the state. You know, you help us, we're definitely going to make a difference. And we have made a difference. When you look at where the child started from, and then where they are on different levels, we have to take who comes in our classroom. And if they didn't have the foundation to begin with, we have to work so very hard to make sure that they get to a point where they can be successful.
Now, the innovations that you're doing are wonderful to get the job done. I mean, no one's going to dispute that. But I would pose this to either of you, Jackie or Jermaine, are there certain inefficiencies somewhere in the system that could be streamlined, so to speak, so he doesn't have to go as far as he does to get the job done? Would you agree there are some things some money going in places maybe it shouldn't go? Or
Okay, what I focus on is what the teacher needs in the classroom and what the students needs in the classroom. And we can talk about, I believe they brought up administration before. That's not part of our purview. We have to deal with what's in the classroom and what's sent to us. And so, but I do believe that if we can have our professional development and that we're all working together and that the family themselves, the parents, come in and start, let's all work together. That's what makes a success for the child.
How many teachers do you represent, Jackie?
12,000.
Wow, 12,000. How many students in the state?
oh, let me see, is that 80,000, I think?
Because we've got how many districts in the state? 85
85.
districts. 85 districts in the state. We're a small state to have so many districts.
You're
and
exactly
so
right.
you can see why people might point to duplication of some of the services that are out there. But when it comes to actually nitty-gritty issues of trying to get the resources to the students, I know you guys are trying your very, very best to get that done.
Right. And we have over 100,000 students. I can't remember how many we have.
I put you on the spot.
Yes,
That
you
was
did.
one of those
There's a lot of
questions.
them.
Old numbers.
That was one of those questions I didn't anticipate, but it just kind of came up because I recognize that there are just a lot of things out there that you all are doing. I want to congratulate you, Mr. Singletary, for what you are doing in the classroom, going
Thank you.
above and beyond to do that. And I understand we're going to talk to Patrick Hayes later in the show, and he too is going the extra mile to do things. And I think that if you had a message that you want to leave with Brian and I and our viewers, it's that you want that money back in the budget that gives teacher salaries an increase.
Correct. Yes, I do.
Well,
Yes, I do.
when we talk about increase, we're talking about restoring what was taken away from us. You know, and it hasn't been given to us over the past 3 years. And we have lost more than $484 million, I think, in schools since 2008. So there's a lot of things that teachers are having to do on their own.
I think we ought to end this segment and go to break, and then when we come back, we're going to bring Patrick Hayes on to talk about a program that he has that deals with teacher salaries, okay? And thank
Okay.
you. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
So you guys stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're watching On Point on WatchBox with Cynthia Arnie on Columbia's own WatchBox.
Welcome back to On Point on WatchBox. Brian McConkey and I are here, and we're talking about education spending in South Carolina. We've got Jackie Hicks here, as she's head of the South Carolina Education Association, and we have Patrick Hayes here. Also, you're a teacher.
I am a 4th grade teacher at Drayton Hall in Charleston, South Carolina, but I'm here today mainly to represent my organization, Restore Teacher Salaries. And I brought you a little hostess gift.
Okay.
All
Something
right.
for your coffee table.
Visual aids.
Okay. Visual aid.
And that is the link for our online petition
Aren't
to
you
restore teacher
special?
salaries.
Aren't you special?
He's a teacher. He makes it easy on us.
That's what we do. And, you know, right now, I'm so glad you're highlighting Governor Haley's budget. It couldn't be more inappropriate to be cutting $80 million from education at a time when teachers have not received their salaries. And in my estimate, over 4 years, I haven't received my full salary. And at the same time, we have almost over $1 billion surplus, I'm hearing today. And then at the same time, we're doing all this, and then we want to give a $62 million corporate tax cut. No, thank you. No, thank you. Not going to happen this year. Not going to be tolerated.
Are you saying the teachers are fired up and y'all going to march on the State House and all that kind of stuff?
Wednesday.
Okay.
Wednesday. This coming Wednesday, the
Okay.
29th, 9:30 a.m. in the Rotunda.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to go off like a Roman candle.
Oh,
I got
are
a lot
you
to
really?
say.
You'll bring more visual aids, I'm sure.
This is
And a lot of your friends.
I did this this morning. I got the whole weekend for this other thing. No, you go right here. You're going to join probably by the time you check in with this, about 7,000 people who've signed on to restore teacher salaries. We're not talking about a raise. Nobody's had a raise. We're not talking about improving the pay structure for teachers. We're talking about restoring the pay structure that's been ignored for several years.
Well, yeah, most people in this, actually all state employees or public service workers have been denied those raises over the past few years. Education, of course, has taken a magnificent hit, and just trying to dig out of that hole now takes a lot, doesn't it? Does it not?
Sure it does. And one thing that we need to remember is that teachers spend their money in their communities. So you are talking about an economic boom. You know, you give us a raise, that money makes the difference with the carpenter, the plumber, the mechanic, whomever, and these small store owners. They are going to
raising
benefit.
teachers' salaries helps the economy?
You're exactly right. It certainly does.
And something that kind of, I think, to my knowledge, separates teachers from other state employees, and I certainly hope that they get what they deserve. They've certainly been ignored far too long. And with the surplus as large as it is, everyone should be taken care of. But with teachers, we have a document. It's a spreadsheet called the salary schedule. And it shows exactly what you're supposed to earn for every year of service you put in and every degree that you have. That has been ignored for the last several years. And we use those documents to compare districts. I used it when I moved here from California to choose a state, a district, a home, a mortgage, the size of my family. To set that aside, it's decades of promises that are being ignored.
The last comments, you guys, before we have to get out of here, that you'd like to leave with our audience. We've told our audience a lot, Neil Melon, in the segments before, and you guys certainly with the other side of the issue. Your final comments.
Teachers are doing a great job in South Carolina. We are not being rewarded for that. Too many things, as I said earlier, little sound bites are just digging into who we are and the great work that we do with our students, and that needs to stop. We do a great job in public education. We have to do the very best we can for our children and encourage our families to become a part of public education and making it better.
And quickly, you, Mr. Hayes.
I want to say that there's a proposal out of the Ways and Means Committee this week to give us a one-step increase, and that's being hailed as the best we can do. We're 2 years behind right now. Give me that one-step increase next year, I'm still 2 years behind. That's never going to come back.
Has to be it. That's it for this edition of OnPoint on WACH Fox. I want to thank all of the participants and thank you guys out there for watching. To send your comments and suggestions to onpointwithcynthia.com. We'll see you guys next week.